Hey folks, Will Sager here talking fantasy football. Back at it again. Thanks for tuning in. What we're going to talk about today is after the first quarter of the season, the first 4 weeks, the key is not to react but to respond. And when I say don't react, I mean don't trade away top level talent because they're not playing well as of yet. Good examples of that would have been to trade Peyton Manning after week 2 or to trade Frank Gore after week 2, even though they're key components of very powerful offenses. Another way to overreact is to trade for unproven talent. It looked like after week 1 that Carlos Hyde was going to be one of the best running backs in the game, but obviously defenses can make adjustments to a run-heavy offense, and then you put the ball in Colin Kaepernick's hands, and we've all seen how that's gone. For Carlos Hyde moving forward, that's a team that's going to be behind in a ton of games, and you can't really run the ball when you're behind. So it's good not to overreact to breakout performances, especially in the NFL nowadays, an offensively driven league where any player can pop up with a great game and then fall back into mediocrity. All right, so when I say respond, the key there is you can do it multiple ways. I know that people have varying levels of interest in fantasy football. If you're a fantasy football freak like I am, you can go back and watch the game film, and you can see problems within, especially with running backs. You can see the offensive line struggles. You can look up injury reports and find out who's coming back into the fold to help the team solidify a running game. You can look at offensive coordinators. A good example actually is C.J. Anderson, who I drafted, regretfully so. He In hindsight, I would have looked at the fact that his new offensive coordinator, Gary Kubiak, just made a great running back out of Justin Forsett last year. So when you look at C.J. Anderson, who's a big, bulky running back, or Ronnie Hillman, who's much slighter and quicker, it would only make sense that Ronnie Hillman would be the better option there. And that's something that I didn't look at going into the draft, and I just looked at the numbers from the previous year. So reflecting on that, it's something that you can take away in hindsight for next season, for next draft, just in general. Let's see what else we got. Timeshares. We talked about that in the first week. And unfortunately, I was right with a lot of these timeshares. Alfred Morris, one of my favorite players, is in a heavy timeshare now with Matt Jones. DeMarco Murray, I thought he would survive the timeshare better than he has, but he looks like the secondary back now. And the problem with that, if you want to talk about looking at game film, the problem with that is that DeMarco Murray's a one-cut running back. He wants to get behind the line, take one cut, and then go straight north-south, meaning he wants to lower his head and get yards after contact. Whereas a Chip Kelly offense, you put the running back often standing next to the quarterback in shotgun, and so even to receive the ball, he's already going east-west, which is side to side, and it limits his ability to get ahead of steam going in positive yards, and you've seen that he barely has any yards per carry. I really think that was a bad move, considering that they had LaShawn McCoy. But then you look at LaShawn McCoy in Buffalo, and Carlos Williams might be the better running back there just because of the same smash-mouth running style that Rex Ryan is looking for. So there's still a ton of question marks. I think LaShawn McCoy will be good because he's such a good pass catcher. He had a touchdown the other day on a pass catch and then didn't do anything else, but at least he's a decent option to keep putting points on the board. For those of you that aren't as into fantasy football and don't have time to look at the game film or the highlights and see what's going on in terms of your players and why they aren't producing, I would suggest just going online and finding various rankings of offensive lines and defensive lines. And then just looking at the total carry. For running back, you want to look at the carries. If they're getting 10 to 12 carries behind a mediocre offensive line, then you have to face the fact that they'll need a touchdown to be at all viable for playing. If they have a strong offensive line, they just haven't got going yet, then I think you're in good shape still. I think someone like C.J. Anderson that we talked about a second ago, I think he's had 5 different players on the offensive line for every game so far, and they're still working out the game plan to accommodate a runner like he is. So I think he'll be fine. It's just very frustrating to be patient with him. Unfortunately, right now you're not going to get any trade value for him. So I'd hold on to him and maybe not play him until he puts up decent numbers, but he should do that within the next 3 weeks, I would say. Bye weeks coming up. It's a good time to hit the waiver wire. This particular week, I wouldn't hit the waiver wire so hard. I don't see too much long-term value. You're not going to find somebody who's going to really bolster your lineup. You'll find some good fill-ins for the flex. For those looking for a flex player, I like Rashard Matthews. Probably should have picked him up last week. He's someone who has proven to be a reliable target in an offense that throws the ball quite a bit. They have Jarvis Landry, who's the main playmaker. He's going to get a lot of short yardage catches and try and blow them up into big plays. But Rashard Matthews is somebody who you can rely on third down. Had 2 touchdowns last week. He's becoming a favorable target. The reason I don't have him higher in terms of being a every week starter is because Jordan Cameron's going to come back from injury. Great catch receiving tight end. And they also have a rookie there, Devontae Parker, who they're very excited about. So I expect him to go down a little bit, but I think he'll be a very positive player for the Dolphins, and I think he's someone that could potentially be a flex or a bye week fill-in for the rest of the year. Another player like that would be Marvin Jones of Cincinnati Bengals. I actually think he could have a few huge games. I think there's teams that can contain A.J. Green, and when that happens, they have a very good receiver in Marvin Jones. I think he's somebody who would be a number one option on multiple teams in the NFL. He's stuck in a situation where he has Tyler Eifert in the tight end, who's a very good red zone target. I don't expect his results to stay so high, but I do see great ability and a quarterback who has shown great ability thus far as well. So Marvin Jones is a good pickup. Carlos Williams, we talked about him a little bit. He is going to take over for LaShawn McCoy while the hamstring heals up, but he also has a touchdown every week. So I think he'll be a running back 1 if LaShawn McCoy doesn't play. He'll be a 2 if LaShawn McCoy is limited, and even when LaShawn McCoy is the number 1 back there, I think he's a viable flex because he's getting a lot of work and a lot of goal line work. He's a good fill-in for bye weeks as well. One running back I picked up, didn't start him, unfortunately, was Lance Dunbar. Brandon Weeden at the helm, I think he's just going to be a check-down specialist. I wouldn't expect too much from him. But the great thing about the Cowboys, they have such a solid offensive line that they can bring in Dunbar and not expect him to do much pass blocking. So every time he's in, he's a viable option to catch a pass. And he had 10 catches for 100 yards last week. And I don't think he'll quite match that. Actually, in the Superdome against New Orleans, he has potential to match that. It'd be nice to see him get in the end zone. But in a PPR league, I think he's guaranteed at least 5 to 6 catches, which makes him a good flex depending on how those plays go. And he's a good fill-in for bye weeks. I actually think the best value this week, if you're struggling for quarterbacks, would be Derek Carr. He had 300 yards against the Ravens, which in hindsight, Andy Dalton put up 300 more. So maybe it's a Ravens secondary issue, but Carr also backed it up with 300 yards this past week. And he has a receiver in Amari Cooper who just seems to be unstoppable. Everyone talked about Amari Cooper's ability to run routes and get open. And he has Latavius Murray, a strong running back, so they have a balanced attack. I like Carr going forward as a substitute quarterback if you need one, or he can fill in on multiple weeks depending on the opponent. Let's see if we got anything else. Tight ends, Charles Clay. He was obviously a great target in Miami, one that was Normally, you don't see tight ends hit the free agency market and be highly sought after. But he was someone that Buffalo wanted right away. He obviously had torched Buffalo in the past. And they keep saying that Buffalo is a run-heavy offense, yet Tyrod Taylor is now ranked in the top 5 quarterbacks in fantasy production. Those of you who saw my video last time, I hope you went and picked him up because he went undrafted, and he's turned out to be an absolute monster, playing really, really well. I expect Charles Clay to be middle of the line, but if you need someone to fill in, and maybe if you have Antonio Gates like I do, you're waiting for him to come back, Charles Clay is a good fill-in option. I think that's all for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know the videos are a little choppy or not produced that well, but it's just talking football, and I hope you guys enjoy it. And if you have any questions, hit me up on Facebook. Thank you very much.